Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are now live. My name is Danielle Sutton, and I am the content animator for Acumen Academy. I'm so thrilled that all of you are here with us today, and of course, our panelists, which I will introduce in a moment. If you aren't already familiar, Acumen Academy is the world's school for social change, a university reimagined for a world that needs all of us. And our mission is to unleash a new generation of social innovators and leaders with the determination and grit to build a more just, inclusive, and sustainable world. So today we have the pleasure of welcoming 3 Acumen Fellows who are all leading product-based social enterprises and have some great perspective to share around the topic of ethical marketing. So a few housekeeping notes before we get started. There will be a replay sent out to everybody, so you can watch your inbox for that, for the recording. And if we have time, well, we will have time at the end to take at least a couple audience questions. So as you're watching, please post your questions in the chat and I will keep an eye on those and we'll come back to them at the end and we'll cover what we can. So you will get a chance to know everybody throughout the next hour, but I'll just give a super brief introduction before we kick it off. Nawshin Khair is the managing director of 2 organizations based in Bangladesh, Aranya and Bengal Craft Society. And they are a sustainable fair trade brand, is Aranya side, which promotes naturally dyed artisanal products in local and international markets. And the nonprofit Bengal Craft Society, which implements sustainable livelihood programs to economically empower vulnerable women. So we're glad you're here. We also have Hitesh Kenjale, who is the co-founder of Desi Hangover, an organization fighting the system of bonded labor to help marginalized communities through technology, skilling, and innovation. So we'll hear more about that organization as well. And last but not least, Pablo Urbano, co-founder of AUARA, a company that sells bottled water and other products, I just learned, and uses the profits to build water wells in places where water does not reach. So super thrilled to have all of you here. Let's start by just passing it right over. So if you could start by telling us a little bit more about your company and what you sell. And as a bonus, just to help us get to know you better in this question, what is the one most important value that drives your decision-making on your leadership team in this organization? So we'll start with you, Hitesh.
Hi, everybody. So we run a company called a fancy name, Desi Hangover. Essentially, India has a larger population of African, which is, I think, the second largest employer after agriculture. So that's a huge amount and a huge number of people that feel this is a primary source of livelihood. Desi Hangover actually works with one of such clusters, which is the shoemaking cluster. To just give you a parallel, the way Italians have a shoemaking culture, even Indians have as rich a culture as Italians. But it's just that the artisans of India are kind of situated in the rural ecosystems. They never kind of went outside those ecosystems because of issues such as bonded labor, then you have societal issues, you have caste issues. So in a way, the ecosystems never develop. What Desi Hangover essentially does is tries to link the skills of the artisans to a more economic value through making sure that they are skilled rightly, they get the right education, they have the right technology. And essentially at the front end, we sell a shoe, which is a conscious fashion brand, and we sell it across the 4 countries, including India. And the other question, which one thing that drives decision making is obviously everything that we do is centered around the artisans. So anything which goes away from our mission, which is to provide livelihood, sustainable livelihood to the artisan communities, is a no-no, and anything which goes in that direction is a total yes.
Okay, great, thanks. It was breaking up a little bit, so we'll stay tuned on the connection, Hitesh, and maybe we may troubleshoot with that. We'll see how it goes. Pablo, let's pass it over to you.
Thank you, and hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Well, AUARA is a social company that invests 100% of the profits in water projects in developing countries, such as wells, or we construct deposits to receive the water of the rain. And how we fund it, through the sales of products like a mineral water brand. I don't know if you are seeing this bottle. This is made by 100 recycled plastic bottle. And also we launched last year some refreshments made by ecological ingredients and fair trade ingredients. And that is what we do. We started 5 years ago, and in these 5 years, we found more than 90 projects in 17 countries, giving access to clean water to more than 50,000 people in countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, also Cambodia, India. We are focused on 3 different markets, like we sell in hotels, in restaurants and corporates, and also a big market like retail, like supermarkets, like Carrefour and some kind of clients like this. And also through e-commerce this year, because of the COVID-19, we have to develop and give a big push to the sales through e-commerce, because it's our way to achieve the houses of the people. And also a very important client for us is the corporates with strong social responsible values. And in that places, they give water in their meetings or maybe to their employees. So it's very important for us. And for AUARA and for myself and for the team, I think one of the most important value is the transparency, and because it's like water. You have to express and to inform and to be like yourself, and that's why the transparency it's very important to say, and also to act in coherence. And also for us, as a social enterprise that we give 100% of the profits, our main goal or our main drive is to maximize that benefit, because it means more projects.
Wonderful. Thanks for the introduction, everybody. Pablo, we'll keep it on you because we will have you start the next question as well, which is, what does ethical marketing mean to you, and how do you practice ethical marketing in your organization?
Well, for us, it's like AUARA express like a way of living. It's very important for us to live in a world that everyone looks after for others, and the love makes the drive and the values in our daily life. So that's what we want to AUARA do also. Through AUARA, through our products, we want to share love. We want to express that other world is possible, with less differences, to involve and implicate the customer that he's buying a product that he wants to drink. In the case of AUARA, he's going to use it. And for us, is to give an opportunity to that customer to involve, to implicate in something good, in an expression of love, in helping other one to have access to clean water. It's like taking advantage that we are. It's a fact that here in Spain, there's a lot of people who is buying a bottle of mineral water. So we want to use that act to express something else, to help other people to have access to clean water, or maybe to recycle some plastic that is in the market, and that's what we want to do.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Nawshin, same question to you. So what does ethical marketing to you, and how does it play out? in your two organizations?
Well, Daniel, we started Orno in 1990 with the local market in mind, which means that local people were always aware of the plight of the craftspeople. This is why initially we steered away from triggering pity buying through our campaigns because we did not want to exploit our customers' emotions. Our strategy was more on telling stories about our unique approach to sustain the environment because in the 90s, not too many people were that conscious about the negative impacts of fashion in a specific country or even in the whole world. So we kind of focused our storytelling more towards our natural dye processes and the eco-friendly materials that we were using. Um, we always kind of wanted to highlight the products and not so much on the people because in Bangladesh again we were kind of the pioneers of establishing a retail brand that you can walk into. It's a proper shop environment. So yes, I think ethical marketing for us, of course, initially meant we wanted to communicate more about the products, but as time went, like at present, like I took over Orno in 1990. Sorry, in 2015. So I totally rebranded the rebranded the company and we have a brand guideline right now. So in that guidelines we have our do's and don'ts so that we can kind of take advantage of today's digital tools and the social media. So I think we have more of a clear strategy now than we had before.
Okay, great. That's helpful context too. Hitesh, over to you. What does ethical marketing mean to you?
For us, it's, I think, echoing one of the points that Pablo made, which is being transparent. And that's very important for us. The way we see this is that would we be at the receiving end of this marketing is the way we try to understand whether this is good or bad. Also, just to give you a small example, we've started using something called as with the near field technology and RFID chip in the shoes. So in case a customer actually gets the phone near, a page pops up and he can actually understand which is the artist who actually made the shoes, how was the impact being transferred to the artisan, and we want those faces to directly talk to the consumers rather than we talking to them. And that's the kind of just an example as to how we look at ethical marketing, of being totally transparent.
Okay, great. And yeah, we'll get more into the details as we hear more of your stories. So Nawshin, over back to you. What role, so you spoke about, you wanted to speak about the products initially, but you also started telling more stories about how the products were made, for example. So what process do you have in place to capture these stories with the people that you work with? And how do you balance exactly what you started to talk about, that desire to communicate the social impact without risk of impact washing or leaning too far into kind of exploiting those stories for the purpose of marketing?
So, Daniel, our vision, mission statements communicates our philosophy of Orno. That is our core key communication strategy. You will see our vision, mission statement throughout our omni channels that we are marketing in. Our business profiles that we give to our buyers or when we're in fairs, we're communicating with our customers. Explains, like Hitesh, about our techniques, our textiles, the heritage crafts that we are conserving or we are marketing and the communities, of course, that we work with. All of these are incorporated in a separate space in like our flyers or in a website about us. This is one of the ways that we are like communicating. We also take permission when we are highlighting our communities. We also take permission from the communities, and when we are taking their testimonials and we are publishing. Once we publish, we also go back to the community and we kind of show them the outcomes of what they have, what we have been doing. If we make documentaries, we kind of try to make it playful and have the stakeholders and the communities to get involved as well in the making of the process as well. So these are some ways we try to keep it authentic, because I think that's one of our key message, that we want to be as authentic. And I agree with both Pablo and Hitesh. The transparency is so important right now. We also take advantage of the WFTO campaign guidelines, and they have, because we are fair trade, we have 10 principles, and from the beginning, ONU has been instilling these 10 principles into our work, into our communities. And some of them are, fair wages, good working condition, women empowerment, gender equity. So we already have these stories to tell of our processes. So we only kind of release these stories during occasions, like when there's Fashion Revolution Day, we do the I Made Your campaign, when it's a Fair Trade Day, we publish the testimonials of our communities. And uh, we feel that when you don't repeat the stories, and just simply have documentaries that is kind of documenting the milestones that you have, is good enough for communication. And this is how we kind of try to avoid the greenwashing, or this the washing of the ethical marketing.
Great, thank you for that. Hitesh, over to you. What role do the stories of the impact stories play in your marketing, and how do you have a process for how you capture those stories, and how do you balance that tension in Desi Hangover?
Sure. So one of the biggest thing that we look at is that consumers are buying products, but they also need to connect emotionally to the products, and that is where the impact stories help them to connect them. Apart from a utility perspective, though we are very clear that we do not want to sell the product based on impact stories. If the product, we judge the quality of the product, we ask a question that if this product was marketed without any notion of impact, would the consumer choose this product? And if they're choosing it, you've done the job well. And the impact stories follow after the purchase and not before. So that's the way that we align it, and let the stories help the consumers connect to the product, apart from the utility of a good shoe. So that's how we look at it. And that's one of the guiding principles that also helps us channelize the formal markets to make sure that we're not, as she rightly said, exploiting the consumer's emotions. So we're very conscious of it.
Love that. Yeah, that's a very concrete couple kind of checkpoint questions to ask in your marketing to make sure it's staying true to where you want it to be. Pablo, I think we had lost you for a couple minutes, but it looks like you're back.
Yes.
So I'll repeat the question for you. What role do stories of impact play in your marketing and communications? And two things related to that. One is, how do you capture these stories in a way that is aligned with your values? And also, how do you balance that tension of wanting to communicate the impact that your organization is making without going so far as to using stories as a tool instead of kind of a share back?
Thank you. Yeah, I was listening to all of you, but I don't know why I was like in black. Well, for us, for AUARA, the stories of impact are very important in our communication, because it's the reason, first of all, because it's the reason why we launch AUARA. We don't want to launch it because to put a new bottle or a new brand of mineral water in the market. It's because we have the opportunity to be in these countries like Ethiopia or Kenya, and we saw the importance of the water in our daily life. So that's the reason we want to launch AUARA, to fund these projects. So yeah, and also it's because we want also to spread the word of how important it is to have water, and that nowadays 700 million of people doesn't have it. And it's 1 out of 10 people in the world, so it's a huge problem. And for us, these stories are the basic of our communication, to implicate, to demonstrate that everyone could make a choice in their in the act of consumption that we are doing as a citizens or as a consumers. We want to change that act of consumption in something else. So that's the reason that we want to explain what means a project, what amount of money we need to fund a project, how is changing or how we can change the life of some people if they have access to clean water. So for us, it's very important. In fact, we have like a QR in the product that if you can scan with your mobile phone, and you see the projects that you are participating if you buy the products of AUARA. Also, our social media it's not the word use, but we want to communicate what does it mean to have a product, to have a project. Sorry, but I'm very completely agree with Hitesh. We don't. We have to sell a product because of their quality, not not only for the impact, or it's an excuse to lower the quality of your product if you have or you are doing a good thing or a project or whatever. And for us, we are completely agree that we want to compete as a brand, as a mineral brand, and not for the projects only. And well, what process we have to capture and share these stories? In AUARA, we have a very strong relationship with our social partners. We collaborate, we implicate together in every project, not being there because we, sadly, we couldn't go to every project because we want to give and to invest the most of the money that it's possible. But we have a strong partnership with them, and we share a lot of stories, personal stories, or photographs, or videos that could help us to explain and to spread the word of what does it mean this project. Also, we have the opportunity, and personally have the opportunity to went to Cambodia in 2019, and we made like a small documental of what it means to have a well in a school, for example, in a remote school that doesn't have access to clean water before 2018, and now they have a well in the school, and you can see how it's changing the life of like 200 children that lives very close to the school. And also, but of course, you have to, I don't like the word use, but you have to use it, but of course in a transparent way, as I said before, and also in a positive way, like constructive communication. It's in terms of there are people behind the scenes or photographs, and you have to respect their dignity and their life, and you cannot use this picture as an ad or as a tool or as something to sell more. I think in my opinion you have to communicate to the people that doesn't know about that people, to our customers, or here in Spain, for example, that there are people who doesn't have access to clean water, but not in a sad way, or like showing a picture of a child with a very poor, sad face, with a big damage from bombs or whatever. This is not the good, I think, in my opinion, way of communicate something, because you have to respect the human dignity that is behind. For us, we want to construct a communication basics in happiness, in how we could change the world to a positive way, and to implicate also our customers, and also the people that we are working with, and to promote, and to be in a, I don't know, like in a positive world.
Great, thanks for sharing. I think what is resonating from all of your stories too is that there are some details in how all of this is executed. There's one thing to have an intention to, create impact through a social enterprise that either creates or sells products to consumers, but there's a lot more nuance there and pieces to pay attention to. So you all shared some really good specific points that people watching can take into their own work. I'm curious, because we all tend to learn through mistakes and failure as well. If you can share a story of a time when your team implemented a marketing campaign and maybe the intentions were great, but as we know, intentions are not at the end of the day, what matters is what actually happens, right? So did you have a marketing campaign or a strategy that created any kind of negative fallout or confusion or backlash, to use a harsher word? And what did you learn from that? What would you have done differently? What now does that allow you to add to your toolkit of ethical marketing going forward? And we'll start with you, Hitesh.
And one example, since we are into shoes and again as a social enterprise, but we use leather as one of the component in our shoemaking process. So it kind of is very anti when you think of it. So we used to be very defensive in our approach, because the leather that we used to source, not totally, but 40% used to come from another cluster, which used to kind of source animal skin, which kind of died a natural death. And this was again a small village cluster. And the way you have a shoemaking artisan cluster, we had leather processing units in India, and it's also a very traditional industry. And a large amount of our leather used to come from there. It was not like a marketing mistake, but I just thought we had to change our approach rather than being defensive about the community, that though it's leather, but it is actually coming from a good source, and we're actually supporting livelihoods in that 40% that we're using. We started being very attacking is the right word. Maybe we started putting that upfront, that these are the things that we do, and this is what leather is for us. So just like a very twist, rather than being defensive about things that people might have doubts about, it's better to put them in the front and kind of just clear out that. So that is just one of the approach that we took, of being aggressive rather than being defensive. Not like a blunder, but I just thought this was very closely related to your question.
Yes, that's helpful. And I have a follow-up on that. So how do you anticipate what objections or discrepancies people may come to you with? I suppose leather is one that probably was more front and center for your product, but how could someone with a sustainable product consider what are the pieces that I can kind of speak about from the start that would answer some people's questions, or help alleviate that conversation?
So I think so when you talk about being conscious, so you have to literally map from the little thread that goes into the viewing to everything that has happened in the product. So you cannot be using plastic, you cannot be using anything that goes totally against your philosophy. And even if we have to use it because there is no alternative at this point of time, we'd rather say that we are using this and we are conscious and we are trying to find a solution for it, rather than saying that, we're all conscious. Because again, we are humans, we're also trying to change, we're also trying to find answers. Maybe we have 80% of the answers, the 20% we are still trying to figure out. We'd rather be upfront about it and saying that maybe you're using plastic, but please bear with us. We're also trying to finding a new solution, but just focus on the 80%, which is good, while we're trying to find the 20%.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So kind of be open to, well, transparency, people are saying in the chat, right? But also, behind the scenes, or here's our work in progress, here's where we're heading. Again, just being totally open. So, okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Pablo, back to you. Do you have a time when something kind of went sideways?
Yes, I think a lot of times. Well, not a lot, but a problem, something very similar to Hitesh, because we use plastic in our mineral bottles, but we use completely recycled plastic. But of course, it's plastic. So we have a lot of haters that express us, why do you use plastic instead of other materials? And we said, okay, for us, we made a lot of studies, not studies from us, but public studies that says that recycled plastic is the best option or the best material to bottle mineral water, because it's very low weight and you can recycle it again, and it's very, well, if you use correctly, it's not bad for the environment. But of course, it's plastic, and it's a big problem. But what we want to explain, or we have to change our message, giving the people the knowledge of how we recycling the plastic. We buy some plastic in some countries, but or our supplier does, and we process that plastic to put again in the market. AUARA is the first brand in Europe that use this recycled plastic, PET, from other bottles, and of course we have to explain that processes, because we are the first ones who use it, and of course you have to explain it at the beginning, and of course, but we want to say is like, of course, if you can drink tap water in your house or whatever, in a glass of whatever, of course it's better. But it's true that in Spain we have a market of 1,000 million liters of mineral water, and that's a lot of bottles, that's a lot of plastic put it in the market. So we want to change it from inside, instead of avoiding the problem or being like, okay, this is not or this is not real. We want to change it from inside, and this is why we want to use this plastic. Maybe, who knows, in a future we use another kind of material, or maybe we stop selling bottles. Who knows? But of course, it's important to face the reality and to change the problems from inside. Also, I have another story of maybe a problem of communication, or a campaign that we've made at the beginning. We communicate, or we want to be supported by influencers, that are people who have a lot of followers in Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and we do not how do you say, we do not be very aligned with maybe some of the people that help us to spread AUARA. And of course, we have a lot of people who says, why do you support this brand, or why this influencer are supporting you, because this influencer use a lot of kind of clothes, for example, that doesn't align with AUARA values. And well, at the beginning we have some problems with that specific campaign, and then and nowadays we change our communication channels through influencers that are related to the brand, or yes. This is some problem that we suffer at the beginning.
So yeah, being more careful about who you partner with as well.
Yes,
The values
exactly.
are aligned. Yeah, that's good learning. Nawshin, over to you. And I know that you have an interesting kickoff to this question that you mentioned right before we started.
Yes, Daniel. So what happened was, beginning of this month, a leading daily magazine, daily newspaper approached us, and they wanted to take some products from our shop and feature them, and they do this all the time. So we were okay with that. So when they went into the shop, they selected a jewelry line that we make with the indigenous community in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, right? So weeks went by. 2 days ago, I get a message from my partner organization, CCA, who worked with the project. Is working with me in the project. His name is Caesar. He's also in the road to becoming an Acumen Fellow for his conservation work, right? So he's like, "Hey, Ma, we're getting heat from the community. There's an article out about Aranya. Did you know about it?" And I was in the middle of something, and I'm like, "We can't make everybody happy, right?" I didn't read the article or the link he sent me about there's this huge big thing an indigenous activist wrote, right? So the next day, when he came back again, I actually read the article, and I was quite appalled. What they did was, so because it's the indigenous community who live in a conflict zone, Chittagong Hill Tracts. So the article kind of started with selling the area, Sundarban being beautiful, then kind of selling the Mro community itself, and I couldn't really tell if it was selling my jewelries or the community. It was very offensive. So we kind of fell victim of misappropriation of culture, right? So and at that time, so we have another fellow, Muktasri. She's a indigenous activist. She's like, "Hey, Ma, did you see this?" I'm like, "Oh my God." So before Muktasri, I could speak to daily the newspaper, and then they actually took the article down, right? But the damage has been done. The greater indigenous community was very offended at the work that we did. Even though it wasn't our fault, we had to kind of take the responsibility and apologize. So Shati was Muktasri kind of mitigated and conveyed our message to them. So you have to be very careful, especially when you're working with communities that are doesn't have the same cultural norms as you, especially, right? And Mos are one of the only indigenous communities who still live remotely in a forest, where they're dependent on the forest for livelihood. So we kind of quietly work with them so they can get an extra income, and kind of steer away from the dependency of the forest, right? So it's a very sensitive issue, and we've been working with them for the last 3 years, and always our first campaign launch was with the Mro women themselves. So they made the jewelers, they were the models. It was so much fun doing this whole campaign with them. We took them to Cox's Bazar, which is the beach, I think 45 minutes away. And we had a blast in our workshop. And when they went back to the community, a lot of them kind of said that, "Oh my God, they came back pregnant. Oh my God, they were like, with this woman, they were also kind of like the elderlies who kind of came. But so you always kind of get, if it's not your own community or own culture, if you're addressing some other cultures, you have to be very sensitive, even interacting with them. So yes, so I think yesterday we took down the article, and I apologize through Muktasri to the community, and she's like, I'm going to put up a status explaining what happened, and she thanked me that you actually took it down. A lot of people don't do that, you know. I'm like, of course, we don't want to hurt anybody, especially when we're actually trying to support this community, right? So my takeaway from this would be that I have to go revisit our brand guideline and actually make a separate one for the media houses to, like, you know, go through. Yeah, so that's my story.
Yeah, it's funny, well, that it happened in between when you heard about the question but before we had this event. I'm curious, so yeah, as a next step, going back to your brand guidelines to add more information for PR opportunities, have you, I suppose in those instances where somebody is promoting on your behalf, are there other things that any of you have done to kind of help ensure that the stories are shared in a way that's aligned with your values, if it's not you actually creating the content? If any of you have other tips related to that, because I think that's a big topic.
Yeah, it's so easy to say yes if they gonna spread and help you to spread your brand. It's very easy to say yes, but you have to be very careful with who is your partner in that situation and what's gonna write it, because your brand is very, it's very easy to attack it if you do not control every word.
So maybe just staying on top of it and having those brand guidelines, I'm sure, will help a lot. Pablo, we'll keep you up because the next question will start with you. What is one skill that you wish was more widely adopted by other social innovators in order to practice more ethical marketing, specifically online or potentially person to person? I say online because so many organizations have had to move online, and there are, I would say, a lot more gray areas in the online space in terms of digital marketing specifically. But in general, what would you hope other social innovators would keep in mind as they become really more ethical marketers?
Well, we adopt, as I said before, it's very important to be transparent and optimistic. I think is two very important values, because it's everything. If you are transparent, no one could attack you, or if they want to attack you, you are completely transparent, and your impact is over there. But before that, you have to do a very strict measure of your metrics, and you have to know a lot of what you are doing and what you could say. It depends, of course, in every kind of impact, but in our projects of water, there are people behind, and it's very important to respect the dignity of every people. And yes, for us, we use this kind of and we know and we learn a lot of metrics that other brands are using, and it's very important to explain it and to know which is your audience or which is your customer, to explain it in a correct way. I think this is one of the most important things that we learn.
Just to clarify, when you say your audience or your customer, do you mean that those might be two different groups, or just that it could be either?
Well, it depends on the client, because if you can see, maybe you have your client as a supermarket, for example, Carrefour or something like that, and then you have your customer or your final customer. And of course, the message is completely different. If you have to uh, communicate a message to millions of people, for example, or to thousands of people through internet or social media, it's very different, that message, for a client that wants to maximize her or their revenue. So yes, it depends on the win-wins of every client or customer. Also, it's not the same to public a post in Instagram that you only have a very few space and only a dynamic or a static image than to explain with a PowerPoint or a presentation that you have half an hour time to explain what is AUARA and of course, what would be the benefits for the two organizations. So yes, it's very important. First of all, understand which is your client, which is your customer, and what are the values that are aligned with that different group of people.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. That's definitely a challenge in the general marketing sphere to have a purchaser who's different from the end customer. So that's something we could probably talk for another hour about just on its own. Nawshin, over to you. What's one skill you would hope social innovators would start to integrate more into their work to become more ethical in their marketing and communications?
So I would rather ask you questions to the innovators before they're doing their campaigns. I would ask, if their main focus is to market their products or services or to talk about their communities that with impact. Do you have a separate strategy for both? Because if you're a new company, you have to wait for any social impact to happen. So as it was mentioned earlier by Hitesh and Pablo. So do you have a clear strategy on the both of them? And when do you do what? When do you communicate your products? And at what pace do you communicate your social impacts? These are the few questions that I would ask them. I would also ask if you have ever explained your campaign strategy to the communities, because it's very important that you also be inclusive of the community when you're drawing your strategy, taking the time to explain to them what you're doing, make them excited about it. And once you've taken a photo or once you have made a documentary, make sure to go back and actually show them and see their reactions and take their feedbacks. I think these are some of the important elements to ethical marketing. So these are the things that I would actually ask any innovator or anybody who's doing a campaign to basically look into and be transparent, of course.
Really, really good questions. And note about taking that campaign back to whoever was part of it to run it by them, make sure it resonates, and also just to keep them part of the process. Hitesh, over to you. What is your advice, either a skill or a question that you would hope social innovators would start to integrate to be more ethical?
Sure. I think one thing that we would ask is, would you market this to your parents? Would you say this marketing elements to your mom and dad as if they were the consumers? If you can answer that question, if the answer is yes, then I think you can go ahead. And I think that is where the true emotions play out. This is one of the things. And the second one I have is also, can you have an open door policy? What I mean by that is, if tomorrow a customer walks in at any time without any sign, would you be open to just show what's happening? When you say this is the impact, have a total transparent that, like, you can say probably you can come in and watch whatever we are doing at any time without asking us. I think those two things, if you kind of do, I think it really just lays out the whole idea of ethical marketing and being true to what you say.
I love that. Really, really good concrete ideas for people to implement. The open door. So I think a theme that definitely has come up a lot today is around transparency and alignment in all different ways. I would like to open it up to people in the chat. If you have specific questions, now is the time, and we have a little bit of time that we can bounce around some other ideas. And while you're considering what questions you might want to ask, I want to let everybody here know that we have a community for Acumen Academy course takers, people like you who are here for this event, this panel, and also many of our fellows from around the world. And this is very new, so you may not have heard about it yet. This would be maybe the second time I'm mentioning it overall. And we'd love to invite everybody here to join. So it is based on Slack, which is a messaging platform, and it allows us to all be in one virtual room together, and you can pop in and out in the ways that suit you best. We have different conversations there inside Slack. We post different resources. We're developing other ways to engage social innovators from around the world who are all at different stages and levels of developing their social enterprises or working within organizations who are creating impact, or even people who are hoping to get on that path and may not quite be there yet. So we invite you to the community, and I put a button up on the webinar platform here for you to jump in. There's an application form which helps us get to know you a little bit better. And then you can join the Slack community. And I will plug next week. Tomorrow, we have the Associate Director of Marketing at Acumen Academy, Joshua Maddox, who I work very closely with. And we will have him inside the community for an hour to answer questions. So this is called a AMA, or an Ask Me Anything. And we invite you to join the community to be part of that conversation with him. You can ask him anything. That's the whole idea. And he's an amazing person, such a wealth of different skills, and you can get his thoughts on your project. He's into technology, coding, marketing, of course, design, and social innovation overall. He has lots of interesting things to share. From there, I don't see any questions coming in, so I will pass it back to any of you if you'd like to share any closing thoughts as we kind of wrap up. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I have a thought. Is that when we try to market these products and try to be very conscious, one thing that comes up is, at least the way I see this, is that as the world is progressing, these are the chunks of populations that we are trying to actively engage with, is we are leaving behind, right? The gap is increasing, and we need more people like us to kind of make sure, I mean, somebody can easily shrug and say, okay, I didn't do anything. Why am I responsible for a part of population who's not able to kind of pace up with the formal world? But I believe that a lot of leaders and needs to be created to make sure that even they are dragged along, and making sure that equality is achieved through whatever business models that we have. That is just one thought I had, that, you know, every lives matters, and we need to make sure that everybody is equal as we go ahead.
Love that.
Thank you. Yeah, good closing. It's very nice. I think also any of us could change like a little world in very close to us, and every act of consumption is about and is something that could change a little bit of our life.
So, well, So I just wanted to say that it's getting increasingly challenging right now to be on all these, platforms like omni-channel perspective. You have the e-commerce, you have Instagram, you have WhatsApp. All these have these businesses and tools. It would really help to strategize and focus where you want to go with them, what type of stories you want to highlight. It's always, you can just keep one of the tools for just doing the storytelling. Utilize one tool, the other tool can just focus on products. So it can get easy if you strategize properly, but if you are trying to do everything at the same time on all the platforms, it might be come at you in a different way. So I would rather have you have a proper, like we're trying to create this strategy, and it's very difficult. We're finding it more and more difficult, especially during COVID time, where we go to a lot of trade fairs. So everything went on the digital platform. We pivoted all these trade shows. We now have like ways to interact with buyers directly over email, giving them our line sheets. So this means that they need more content. They're demanding more stories from us, so they can pick and choose because they can't really physically see us or our products. They rely on our stories. So it's very important that we now, I don't know for how long, maybe the new normal will actually demand this from us for a longer time to be online. So it would be great to have a clearer strategy to go forward.
Thank you, Nawshin, for sharing. That makes a lot of sense. And again, to handle all the nuances that have come up in the different stories and advice that you all shared here today, to have that thoughtfulness from the very beginning, whether that be on what you're sharing in each channel or how you collect the stories, how you feedback to the people in your organization, all the stakeholders, artisans, or anyone else involved. So it sounds like that thoughtfulness, transparency, those are all important pieces. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I know it's very late for some of you, so I really appreciate that you were here today. And thanks for everyone who came to join the event. Watch your email for the replay, and I'll include a few links as well to things that we mentioned here today. So thanks, everybody, and we will be in touch soon. Hope to see you in the community.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.